Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I used to work as a security team leader for a huge shopping corporation in England. Most days were pretty standard. Shoplifters trying their luck, teenagers messing around, the occasional drunk person wandering in. But this particular day had been absolute hell. After 8 hours of drowning in paperwork and dealing with managers who all thought their jobs were more important than anyone else's, I finally managed to escape to the staff room for something to eat. I was starving and had been dreaming about my sandwich all afternoon. I had just sat down, unwrapped my food, and was about to take the first beautiful bite when my headset buzzed. The CCTV officer told me they needed me in the arrest room because they had a situation. I stared longingly at my sandwich, sighed deeply, wrapped it back up, and headed downstairs. So much for dinner. When I got to the arrest room, I found one of our security officers with a man and his young son who looked around 10 years old. The officer pulled me aside and explained they'd caught the pair eating 2 sausage rolls from our hot counter and throwing away the packaging without paying. Each roll cost just £1, so it was a minor theft. For thefts under £5, our policy was simple: take their name and address, issue a 6-month ban from the store, and send them a civil recovery notice, basically an £80 fine that covered our costs for dealing with the situation. I introduced myself to the man and explained the procedure. I asked him if he had any identification that confirmed his address. The man smiled pleasantly, like this was all just a minor inconvenience. He assured me that he understood the situation. He reached into his wallet and handed me a card, asking if it would work as identification. It was a Professional Association of Diving Instructors card, a PADI card. I recognized it immediately because my brother ran the local diving lake. I asked the man if he was a diver at the local school. His smile widened, and he claimed that he was actually an instructor there. The son sat quietly beside him, looking nervous and embarrassed. I told him that was great and explained that I needed to check with my manager if we could accept this as ID. I promised I'd be right back. I stepped out with his PADI card, but something felt off. I've been to my brother's diving lake dozens of times, helped out there occasionally, and had never seen this guy before. If he was an instructor, I would have recognized him. I decided to call the diving school. The owner picked up after a few rings. I identified myself as calling from the security team at the shopping center. I told him that we'd detained one of his instructors for a minor shoplifting incident. The owner seemed shocked and explained that all their instructors had to pass background checks because they worked with children. He asked who it was. I gave him the name and ID number from the PADI card. The owner expressed relief and clarified that the person wasn't an instructor. He told me the man was just a customer who had completed a basic diving course 2 years ago. I told the owner I had suspected as much. I asked if he could do me a quick favor and check if the address I had matched what they had in their system. I read out the address the man had given us. The owner confirmed that the address was incorrect. He explained that the numbers were different and the postcode was wrong. He gave me the correct address and then added that they actually had 2 addresses on file for the man. After some sweet talking, I got the second address as well. I thanked him for his help and we ended the call. Armed with this new information, I walked back into the arrest room with a civil recovery notice in hand and the sweetest smile I could muster. I told the man the good news that his ID had been accepted. I explained that he was free to go, but would receive a 6-month ban from our store and would get a fine in the mail from our civil recovery department. He seemed relieved and left quickly with his son, probably thinking he'd gotten away with giving us fake information. 6 months passed, and I had completely forgotten about the incident until one of our front door security guards called me. The front door guard told me that there was a woman there with a box of biscuits for the security team, saying it was a thank you. This was unusual. Shoplifters don't typically return with gifts. I went to meet her, curious. I thanked the woman for the biscuits but asked what they were for. The woman told me I had no idea what I'd done for her. She explained that she'd been fighting for sole custody of her son for over a year against her ex-husband. She described how, out of nowhere, she had received a letter about him shoplifting with their son in tow. The court had seen this as negligent parenting, and she had finally gotten full custody. I suddenly realized who her ex-husband was. Our diving enthusiast was the fake address. The woman added that the letter had come to her address, not his new one. She figured he must have given us her address thinking it wouldn't matter for such a small theft. I smiled, thinking about how his attempt to avoid consequences had backfired. A year later, I received an update from our civil recovery department. Our diving friend had ignored the 80-pound fine, so they took him to court. The judge wasn't impressed, and the fine jumped from 80 pounds to 2,000 pounds, and the case was ruled in our favor. All of this over 2 sausage rolls worth 2 pounds. Had he just been honest from the start, he would have walked away with a small fine and a temporary ban. Instead, his dishonesty cost him 2,000 pounds and custody of his son. People tend to find me intimidating even when I'm not trying to be. At over 6 feet tall with a build that screams former football player, even though I never played, I've gotten used to folks giving me extra space on the sidewalk. That same presence is what helped me land my job at an unarmed security company. We wear the full uniform, badge and all, but no weapons. Still, if things go south, we're allowed to defend ourselves and hold suspects until the cops arrive. Despite looking like I could snap someone in half, I'm really not one for confrontation. I prefer to resolve situations with words rather than force. My wife always jokes that I'm just a teddy bear in a linebacker's body. This story happened about a year ago, so some of the conversations might not be word for word, but the gist is accurate. It was a chilly afternoon and I had just finished my shift. I needed to check out some potential birthday gifts for my wife, so I stopped at a local department store. Usually I take off my uniform shirt after work, but since it was cold and my undershirt is pretty thin, I kept it on. I wasn't planning to buy anything that day, just browsing, so I didn't grab a cart or basket. When I was looking at some jewelry, I noticed a young woman, probably in her early 20s, enter the same aisle. She looked visibly frightened, constantly looking over her shoulder with panic in her eyes. When she spotted me in my security uniform, relief washed over her face, and she immediately headed straight toward me. The young woman nervously asked if I could walk her to her car because a creepy guy was following her. This wasn't the first time someone had made this kind of request. In my line of work, I've learned never to refuse when a woman asks for help in situations like this. I immediately agreed to help her and suggested we head to the front of the store. We started walking toward the store exit. The young woman stayed close to me, still looking nervous. About halfway to the front, a man suddenly appeared in front of us, blocking our path. He had this fake friendly smile that didn't reach his eyes. The man approached us and told the young woman that she had forgotten to give him her number. I could feel the young woman tensing up beside me. Without hesitation, I stepped between them, using my body as a barrier. I told the man that the woman didn't appreciate him following her and warned him that he would be removed from the store if he continued. I was bluffing since I didn't actually work there, but with my uniform he had no reason to think otherwise. His smile instantly disappeared, replaced by an angry glare. The man angrily claimed that she was his girlfriend and they were just having a little fight. While he spoke, I could see the young woman behind me frantically shaking her head at his every word. I told the man it was time for him to leave. That's when he completely lost it. He started screaming at me, and it took all of about 10 seconds for people around us to notice the commotion. One of the store employees pulled out a radio and began speaking into it. As the man continued yelling, I maintained my position between him and the young woman, keeping my voice calm and steady. I repeatedly told him he needed to leave now. I figured store management would arrive soon, so I wasn't too worried. Sure enough, within minutes, a manager appeared along with several actual store security guards. Their uniforms looked nothing like mine. They wore polos with the store logo. The man's behavior became increasingly erratic as the store security approached. They had to physically restrain him as he alternated between screaming profanities at me and the employees, and desperately trying to convince everyone that the young woman was his girlfriend. The man kept shouting at the woman to tell everyone they were together, asking why she was doing this to him. The store manager ordered him to calm down immediately, but he responded that it wasn't any of their business and insisted again that she was his girlfriend. While store security dealt with him, I overheard the young woman explaining to another employee that she had never met this man before in her life. He had started following her around the store, making uncomfortable comments, and wouldn't leave her alone. After the situation was under control, I explained to the manager that I didn't actually work at their store. I was just shopping after my shift at a different security company. The manager thanked me for stepping in despite the misunderstanding. I still offered to walk the young woman to her car as originally planned. As we headed to the parking lot, we both started laughing about the confusion. I apologized for any confusion and hoped she didn't think I was pretending to work at the store. She responded enthusiastically that she was just grateful for my help and admitted that when she saw my uniform, she thought I was store security and reached out because she was desperate. I assured her that I would have helped even without the uniform, expressing my belief that no one should have to deal with that kind of harassment. She thanked me again, saying she didn't know what would have happened if I hadn't been there, and mentioned that the guy wouldn't take no for an answer. When we reached her car, she thanked me again, looking genuinely relieved. She mentioned feeling like she should report the incident somewhere. I suggested that while the store now had his information, she could also file a police report since what he did was harassment. She nodded thoughtfully as she got into her car, saying she thought she would file a report. As a parting comment, she thanked me again for being her bodyguard that day. As I watched her drive away safely, I felt good about stepping in, even if it meant dealing with an uncomfortable confrontation. Later, I found out from a friend who works at that store that the creepy guy was banned from the premises, and the young woman did end up filing a police report. Let me give you some background. I worked as an overnight manager at Walmart for nearly 5 years. I dealt with all the usual stuff: shoplifters, inventory problems, and of course the infamous "I want to speak to your manager" customers. Eventually, the company started making a bunch of changes. They restructured management positions, cut hours, and basically made it clear that moving up was going to be nearly impossible. So after a lot of thought, I decided to leave. I gave proper notice and left on good terms with my store manager, who understood completely. I still live about 10 minutes from my old store, and on Father's Day, I needed to grab a few things before taking my family out to dinner. Since we were going somewhere nice, I was dressed in khakis and a blue button-up shirt, which, if you don't know, is dangerously close to Walmart's dress code. While I was grabbing the last items on my list, I ran into my former store manager near the registers. We stopped to catch up for a bit, talking about how things had changed since I left, how my new job was going, and how his kids were doing in college. Just as we were saying goodbye, this woman, the perfect stereotype of a Karen with the haircut and everything, came storming up to me, practically foaming at the mouth. I looked at my former boss with a "what do I do?" expression, and he just grinned and nodded, basically giving me permission to handle it. Karen angrily accused one of the cashiers of verbally assaulting her and humiliating her in front of other customers. She dramatically pointed at the cashier while making these claims. I immediately recognized this cashier as someone I had personally hired and trained when I worked there. She had even babysat my kids a few times, and our families were pretty close. I knew immediately that whatever this Karen was claiming was complete nonsense. I asked her to slow down and start from the beginning. Karen then claimed that the cashier had told her that her money was no good at the store, refused to run her card, and called her trash. I could tell right away this was a scam. I'd seen it dozens of times during my years at Walmart. Someone tries to use a declined card, then makes a scene, hoping to get free stuff just to make them go away. Not on my watch, even if I didn't actually work there anymore. I suggested that she come with me to security, where they could take her statement and review the register footage. Karen started following me at first, but as soon as I mentioned register footage, she stopped dead in her tracks. Her face changed completely and she started getting even louder. Karen began demanding her items immediately, screaming that she wanted them now. While she was having her meltdown, I spotted the head of security walking our way. Perfect timing. I told her that I understood and asked her to come with me so we could resolve the issue more quickly. The head of security stopped to talk to the store manager, and I gestured for Karen to follow me. We all made our way to the security office. The head of security opened the door and let Karen in. Inside, the security footage was already on the screen, and my old boss moved past me into the room. The store manager began to inform Karen that they would need to detain her until the police arrived, but she interrupted him. She refused to wait, demanded her things, and asked who he was, her voice getting increasingly louder. The store manager explained that he was indeed the manager of the store and pointed out that not only had she been yelling at a customer, meaning me, which made me grin at her shocked face, but she also had a stolen credit card in her possession and would need to wait for the police. My old boss shut the door and turned to me with a knowing smile. He asked me when I was planning to come back to work at Walmart. I laughed and told him that as fun as that incident was, I wasn't coming back because I'd had my fill of retail work. The whole thing gave me a sense of satisfaction I hadn't felt in a long time. I never told her I didn't work there anymore. I just acted like a concerned employee, and she fell for it completely. Turns out the card she was trying to use was stolen and had been flagged in the system. Her whole tantrum was because her stolen card got declined, and instead of slinking away, she tried to bully her way into getting free stuff. I said goodbye to my old boss and headed out to meet my family for our Father's Day dinner. Let me tell you about the time my co-workers and I taught our company a lesson about being penny wise and pound foolish. I work for one of the big three defense contractors. My home base is in Guam, but our team got sent to Florida for a 6-month training program. We were all staying in hotels on the company's dime, or so we thought. For the first couple of months, everything went smoothly. Then suddenly, the finance department started rejecting our expense reports. The accounts payable person, let's call her the bean counter, told us that after 30 consecutive days in a hotel, we were responsible for paying the hotel tax ourselves. This wasn't small change. It was $13 per day, almost $400 a month. We had an emergency meeting in my hotel room. None of us knew about this rule. One co-worker had checked our contract and found no mention of employees being responsible for hotel taxes. Another stated he wouldn't pay the late fees that were now accumulating on our corporate cards. The bean counter insisted this was standard policy, outlined in a handbook none of us had ever seen. As we discussed our options, I remembered another clause in our contracts. The company would pay for one trip to our home of record each month, which none of us had been using because we were so busy with training. I suggested a solution. If the company wouldn't pay hotel taxes after 30 consecutive days, we simply wouldn't stay for 30 consecutive days. We'd use our contractual monthly trips home to break up our stays. The next morning, we all booked our trips. My co-worker from Guam booked a round-trip flight costing $1,950. Mine was only $700 since I'm from the mainland. The bean counter didn't realize what was happening until the travel expenses started coming in. She quickly called a meeting, shocked at how much these flights were costing. I explained we were just following our contract, and since we needed to break up our hotel stays to avoid the tax they refused to cover, this arrangement worked perfectly. She protested that the flights cost far more than the hotel taxes would. But as another co-worker pointed out, we were simply working within the parameters they set. The company was legally obligated to provide these trips home. In the end, they spent between $700 and $2,000 per person per month on flights, all to avoid paying $400 in hotel taxes. This reminded me of another incident years ago returning from Japan. My flight had an 8-hour layover in Tokyo. I found a quicker flight that cost $200 more, but they rejected it because it wasn't the lowest fare available. What they overlooked was that I'm paid door-to-door when traveling, from leaving my house until reaching my destination hotel. I asked if they'd rather pay me for 8 extra hours at double time than pay $200 more for the direct flight. The coordinator simply stated those were the rules. So I took the cheaper flight with a long layover, earning an extra $1,300 in overtime, all to save $200 on a flight. After 2 months of our monthly trips home, the company revised their policy. Suddenly, hotel taxes were covered for extended stays, and a memo went out reminding everyone that monthly trips home should only be used when necessary. We canceled our upcoming flights and things normalized, but the company had already wasted tens of thousands of dollars, all because someone was stingy about a few $100s in hotel taxes. The people who write these contracts really don't think anything through. But hey, I'm just following the rules they set. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.